In the city of Pine Hill, a middle-aged woman was found dead at her apartment when her husband was away at work. The murderer disappeared, leaving no traces or hints, making it extremely difficult for the detectives who found the body. However, time played a crucial role in this shocking case. The people that you need to pay close attention to in this case were Daniel Garner, a veteran architect by occupation who was married to Linda, and Mark Johnson, a well-to-do financial advisor married to Jennifer. This is a very disturbing crime case you will know about today. Daniel Garner happened to be a man with a charming personality who shared what was classified as the perfect marriage with his wife, Linda. This couple shared a special bond with Mark Johnson and his wife Jennifer, a bond that surpassed a mere exchange of sharing meals together, a bond that involved them engaging in an act that should be classified as unheard of. These couples usually engaged in a swapping arrangement, which saw them sleep with each other's partner. Initially, it was all fun and games. Not until Daniel took it a step too far and started developing an attachment towards Jennifer, Mark's wife. Linda had noticed her husband's sudden attachment to Jennifer, which breached the concept of their agreement. She, however, made a vow to see to the end of it. Unknown to her, it would lead to something perilous in the near future. Daniel was a successful architect who had made a name for himself with his top-notch architectural designs, which were second to none. He had quite the perfect relationship with his wife Linda, who happened to be a successful teacher, and one who was loved by all, most especially her colleagues and students. They lived in a gorgeous apartment with an organized and colorful garden, which Linda cherished with her all. It was situated on Maple Street. 5 years earlier, Mark and Jennifer Johnson had moved to Pine Hill. This financial advisor had all the attributes of a youthful party animal. He was one with whom there was never a dull moment. His wife Jennifer was equally as cheerful, a woman with beauty hard to miss, one that attracted onlookers and made outsiders desire a friendship with her. This couple had burning characteristics that made for an enviable marriage. These two couples turned out to share the same interests and characteristics. Owing to this, they became attached with each other, mostly sharing each other's company. And all of a sudden, a silly idea was brought to the table. In one of their many hangout sessions, where they usually had a lot of wine coupled with other activities, someone in the group suggested they swap wives, probably in a desperate bid of adventure. This, however, wasn't frowned at. In fact, it was an adventurous idea, which was welcomed by the others. But it wasn't official yet, as it was thought to be caused by the intoxicating feeling of the red wine. However, this crazy idea had resurfaced in the next few weeks, and both parties were already on the verge of a mutual agreement, which they eventually sealed, with some boundaries attached with it, of course. And in no time, they have had their first experience. Initially, it felt weird to both parties, but it was still exciting and sort of an experimental escapade. However, as time passed, it became a regular occurrence that brought happiness and stability to both of their relationships. It also made the bond of both couples stronger, that they shared almost everything together, which included getaway trips and joint parties, while still guarding each other's secrets. This meant they couldn't speak about these occurrences outside the confines of their homes. However, this perfect arrangement soon began to fall apart when Daniel began showing more interest than he was supposed to towards Jennifer. And this he made very obvious by mostly looking for the slightest of reasons to be around her or spend time with her. Linda had previously ignored it as she noticed Daniel's change in behavior. Mark, too, had a hint of this deviation, but both had thought it to be an early stage of obsession that would probably soon fade off. But they were wrong. Daniel now found himself thinking mostly about Jennifer and their times together. Slowly, he lost himself and his thoughts, and also didn't care about losing his marriage with Linda. He had one thought, and one only: to have more of Jennifer. Unknown to him, the implications of such inappropriate cravings. Jennifer, who was for fun and leisure in the beginning, had suddenly turned into a breath of fresh air for Daniel, who saw himself mostly lost in thoughts about her, so much that it interfered with his daily activities. This was turning unhealthy for everyone. But Daniel only deteriorated. He started looking for ways to be mostly around Jennifer. He also started trying to play the role of Mark in her life. And this was greatly noticed by Linda. However, she downplayed it to the thrill of their new adventure and felt he would soon be over it, but he only got worse. He found himself mostly talking about Jennifer, her likes and dislikes, and also got irritated when he wasn't around her, all to the notice of his wife, who had made it a point of duty to confront him. And when she did, he dismissed her observations, claiming they were untrue and baseless, and that they were as a result of jealousy. At this junction, she took a step back in order to not seem problematic, and in order to not spoil their newfound adventure. But she kept on watching his moves. Daniel wasn't helping matters, as he was caught yet again lustfully staring at Jennifer for a long amount of time, long enough to make Jennifer herself aware of the fact that his emotions were getting out of hand. Initially, she found it flattering, but then the frequency and intensity with which Daniel silently expressed his lustfulness began to increase, and this made Jennifer very uncomfortable. He became so attached to their times together that he began losing sight of the initial plan. He began touching her in ways that denoted deep feelings, and not a mere pleasure escapade. Jennifer had now grown deeply uncomfortable, and this she communicated to her husband Mark, who dismissed her, claiming Daniel probably just had a way of being overly expressive. However, things became clearer to all parties when in one of their bonding getaway escapades, Daniel insisted on having time alone with Jennifer, much to the dismay of Mark and Linda. Even when Jennifer attempted to bypass the situation, she was met with strong insistence and much pressure from Daniel. While they were at it, Daniel finally made his intentions known and crossed the line with a certain comment. He expressed his desire to start a new family with her, one away from the watchful eyes of her husband Mark and his wife Linda, who at that moment was eavesdropping and overheard all Daniel had said. Immediately, he said that Jennifer felt a wave of unease and at this point begged to excuse herself. Linda immediately seized the opportunity to confront her obsessed husband. This time, he was a little reluctant about denying the claim, but still didn't admit to any of them. At this point, Linda was growing frustrated because Daniel's obsession with Jennifer grew stronger with time, and she knew it was only a matter of time before it interfered with their marriage, but she still loved him. Daniel, on the other hand, had taken his obsession to the next level, showing up in Jennifer's day outside the arranged meetings, even as far as her yoga classes. At this point, Jennifer was getting scared. She knew what these types of obsessions led to if left unchecked, so she made a decision to confide in her friend. Her friend convinced her to give as much space as possible to Daniel if she wanted the obsession to ever come to an end. Jennifer wasted no time in taking heed. She even went as far as ending the arranged meeting altogether with hopes that it would trigger some sense into Daniel. At one time, Mark had attended an urgent business trip, leaving Jennifer all alone. Daniel saw his chance, and as expected, he was at her doorsteps unannounced. Jennifer couldn't hide her immediate shock. However, she led him into the sitting room to hear what he had to say. Daniel wasted no time expressing his fully developed feelings, proposing she accept him so they could start a new life somewhere far away. As usual, Jennifer turned him down, explaining once again the boundaries of their arrangements, and when Daniel would not be denied, in anger and fear of losing her marriage and her friendship with Linda, she announced to him that the arrangements altogether had been called off. Daniel tried to persuade her, but she had made up her mind. She did her best in avoiding him, even reporting the matter to his wife, Linda, who already knew beforehand. Linda, caught between pain and loyalty to her husband, promised to sit with him to discuss the matter. Daniel's feelings only deepened, and he continued showing up at her workplace in a bid to convince Jennifer. Jennifer was already feeling unsafe at this point, and decided to face him and explain the gravity of his request one more time. She reiterated the end of the arrangement once again and urged him to act appropriately. Daniel grew with rage as he was being rejected, and he made several accusations at her, which included leading him on and abandoning him afterwards. Jennifer, who was unfazed by those accusations, insisted on ending the arrangement. Linda had followed Daniel unknowingly to him, so she saw and heard all that transpired in that instant. She was filled with pain at seeing how desperately a man she called husband yearned for the attention and intimacy of another woman. But she had to act immediately because Daniel was unable to handle denial, and his passion for Jennifer was driving out the anger in him, seeing how determined she was not to give in. Daniel resorted to verbal abuse, and it was almost as though he was going to do something drastic the next minute. At this point, Linda came out of her hiding place and called out his name. Daniel, on seeing his wife, at that instant snapped out of his misery in a mixed feeling of confusion and shock. Jennifer took the opportunity and zapped away, while Linda consoled her husband, urging him to take things easy and let them devise a way to move past all that had transpired. In the coming days, the true extent of Daniel's obsession would come into play, leading to a most drastic decision that would cause pain and grief. The dramatic situation at the park continued to haunt Daniel. The utter rejection and the sight of his wife had left him in pandemonium and anger. His wife continued trying her best to curtail the situation while dealing with her own emotions. But Daniel would not listen to reason, as his emotions had eaten deep into him. Daniel had started deteriorating, even to the extent that he stopped going to work and spent a greater part of his time thinking about Jennifer's rejection and feeling a deep sense of injustice. Linda had her own emotions to deal with, frustrated and fearing what the future held for them. Little did she know that what the future held was bigger than all of them, and that she wasn't ready for it. None of them were. Jennifer had already moved forward, focusing on her marriage and work. She didn't tell Mark the extent to which Daniel's obsession had gotten to, probably in a bid to avoid any form of brawl or violence. She only hoped the end of their arrangement saw to it that Daniel came back to his right senses. But she was also wrong. Jennifer had come back from work one time, only to find Daniel patiently waiting for her. Her heart sank in fear at the desperation of this man in not letting her go. Her voice was faint as she begged him to leave, but he wouldn't listen to reason. Desperate to get away from the situation as soon as possible, Jennifer attempted to ignore and walk past Daniel. He, however, reacted in a shocking manner. He grabbed her hand as tight as he could, with rage in his eyes and an attempt to cause her pain. Jennifer was almost on the top of her voice from the pain she felt. However, a neighbor who heard her voice showed up to see what was happening. But Daniel had already fled. Jennifer, seizing the opportunity, ran inside to take shelter. She immediately called Linda in a bid to settle the matter without the involvement of the police. Linda, however, promised to visit her the next day so they could discuss how to handle Daniel's deteriorating behavior. At the cafe, Jennifer narrated the ordeal to an agitated Linda, who knew this couldn't obviously go on. She just tried to calm Jennifer down and promised to try to talk to Daniel in order to put him in check. When she got back home, she confronted Daniel about what happened on the night of the event, and Daniel responded by blaming Linda for conspiracy against him, adding that she was a betrayer. Linda, not wanting to escalate the matter, withdrew from her accusations immediately for her own safety. With the issue getting out of hand, Daniel's mind had grown wild and darker, that he couldn't accept rejection, and he started thinking of days to get better. And then, a dark thought had dawned on him. He reasoned that if he must feel better, then the source of his pain would have to be eliminated. He was either having Jennifer, or no one was. Before that cold night, Mark had embarked on another journey, leaving Jennifer all by herself. Daniel, aware of this fact, made his way to her house, and there she was sleeping. Seeing her so peaceful and unaware made him rage even more. Jennifer woke up to the sight of Daniel and tried to scream and resist. However, Daniel covered her attempted scream with his hand. He was handling a kitchen knife, and with this, he left it in her chest, stabbing as deep as he could. She died instantly. Daniel fled the scene immediately in utter confusion, probably regaining his senses after the act was committed. His first point of call was his home, where Linda found him in bloodstains and in a state that suggested he had done something grave. She immediately realized what he had done and attempted to help him cover it up. After all, he was still her husband. Knowing the implications of Daniel's actions, she immediately sought to clean all traces of any evidence that would lead back to them. She ordered Daniel to have a hot shower, and she eliminated any trace of blood that could implicate him. She also asked him, like a kid, to recount the details the exact way it happened, and he did just that, reciting the events as they unfolded. Linda had made up a story that both of them were to give an account of, should they be confronted any time in the future. She also made a plan that would make this story stick, by calling a friend claiming Daniel had been with her all day. She also drove far away in order to burn the clothes and remnants of any blood-stained items that may implicate them. The police had soon found out about the tragic event and were on a mission to get to the bottom of the matter. And this they did by interrogating everyone they could come across. Daniel, who at this point was agitated, managed to avoid suspicion from the detectives and onlookers. He had withdrawn from both friends and relatives alike, which was bound to draw suspicions. Linda was incredibly composed and handled the situation with utmost prudence. She was always on her toes and alert as to any new development, to avoid being caught off guard by any means. She was a real pillar of support. However, she felt that they would need more than just a coherent story for attention to divert fully away from them. She suggested Daniel act as though he was devastated by the loss of Jennifer, so as to remove any form of suspicion. Daniel did just that. Speaking so fondly of Jennifer, he feigned sadness and distraught. Mark, Jennifer's husband, seemed to buy the whole narrative, and although he searched for answers, he appreciated the concern from Daniel and his wife. Daniel's mental state had begun deteriorating. He started seeing hallucinations and having nightmares, and he often abused alcohol. Linda, seeing this, became scared that he may one day confess in a drunken state, kept a close eye, and made sure he went nowhere or visited anyone at night. Daniel was already getting really depressed and guilty, and this he communicated to his wife, who suggested that they take some time away from the town in a bid to ease the tension. This helped them extensively. Linda moved over to the next stage, which was answering whatever questions came their way. She taught him how to respond to police questions and drilled him on how to respond without hesitation. Linda was so desperate to protect a lifestyle that didn't come overnight, and this fueled her desire to keep this case uncovered. Daniel, although still distraught, had learned to manage the situation properly and acted stable. However, Daniel's newfound bad habit, which was drinking, had started making onlookers suspect his involvement in the crime. As much as it circulated, Linda tried her best to quench the fire of such rumors. However, it was only a matter of time before the truth came to life. Detective Mitchell interrogated the couple in a bid to look for any irregularities that would probably suggest an involvement in the crime. Linda held her end perfectly. Daniel tried in holding his own end by telling it the way Linda had initially drilled him to act. But Mitchell could see right through him and suspected foul play. After weeks of investigation, proof had come to light, supporting Daniel's involvement in the crime. Forensics had analyzed Jennifer's phone and found a set of disturbing messages, which suggested that indeed Daniel was obsessed and possibly ended up killing her due to him being rejected by her. Daniel was immediately called again for another set of questioning. He tried really hard to maintain composure and stuck to it, but more evidence was resurfacing, and time was running out. A crucial piece of information which would finally solve the mystery came out. And on the day Daniel packed his car outside to carry out the deed, a neighbor who recognized his car had seen him and recalled that he behaved strangely when he was seen on the day of the murder. This information led to the police obtaining a warrant to search their house, hoping to find the truth. And behold, the police had found remnants of the burnt clothing and traces of Jennifer's blood, undermining Linda's effort in covering all that evidence. The evidence against them was too glaring and precise. From the burnt clothing remnant to the traces of blood, to eyewitness accounts and phone information, all fingers were pointed to one person, and one alone: Daniel. He had begun giving into the pressure due to the weight of evidence against him, and Detective Mitchell saw his chance. He applied more pressure, prompting Daniel to finally spill all that happened that fateful day. Daniel narrated how his obsession led to his loss of control, hence leading him to commit the dreadful act. However, he didn't leave out any information from the confession, as he also implicated Linda, his wife. She was immediately contacted for questioning once more, yet she still held her end of the story and denied any involvement or knowledge of the case. But when a detailed account of Daniel's confession was shown to her, she knew it was the end of the road. She finally admitted to helping Daniel out of loyalty, and that she feared losing everything they had built together. This was the end of the road for them. They were immediately charged to the courts, a case which attracted the general public. A crowd awaited the verdict of a couple who in one way or other partook in the gruesome killing of Jennifer. Daniel was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for his direct involvement, while Linda, due to her cooperation with the investigative process, was sentenced to 15 years imprisonment, with the possibility of parole after 10 years. Mark Johnson, Jennifer's husband, was left in shambles, and he had no other choice than to try to pick himself up and move past the situation. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like for your favorite entertaining channel, and do not forget to subscribe and comment your thoughts below.